were so many people going to Russia thinking that life was going to be, they were going to help this thing and make a lot of dough, and they weren't. When you had a profitable company, became widely known, which made life interesting. The guy who ran our venture one day said, Steve, when you come to Moscow for our board meetings, I do not want you to go get a cab. I want you to wait in the baggage area, and I'm going to send a driver and an armed guard, and they're going to take you to the car and then to your hotel. And then in the later days, they're going to take you from your hotel to the various meetings that you have. And that's the way we operated for about 3 or 4 or 5 years. It was also interesting to me that our partners did not want us to set up our main shop in Moscow. They did not want the hard currency that we received when those tank cars were unloaded to land in Moscow, because they thought it would be grabbed. And so what they said was, you need to set up our main operation in Cyprus. Cyprus was a British territory when Russia went through the revolution, and they were amongst the first countries to recognize Russia. And so you have this long relationship where Cyprus was kind of like a younger brother. And Cyprus was unique in the sense that it had Western auditors, it had a sophisticated computer technology, it had great communication skills, and we had access to the ministry's car management service, which was better than any railroad in the United States. We knew any minute where every car was. If it was in a repair shop, we knew the status of repairs. It was a great choice. But it also was vindicated when we had bank accounts in Moscow and different Russian agencies decided to grab those bank accounts. We shut down that bank account. A week later, we opened new bank accounts. We moved money to Russia, and we paid our bills. And we continued to operate that way for years. Russia had other risks. The Moscow mayor was a chap by the name of Luzhkov. Luzhkov had been in that job for a very long time. He had a lot of power. And even to this day, his wife is probably the wealthiest woman in Russia. Luzhkov decided that because the Ministry of Railways was domiciled in Moscow, that he could grab those shares. He was going to privatize them, which privatizing probably meant mostly it was going to end up in his back pocket. From my standpoint, that meant the deal would be dead. If you didn't have the Ministry of Railways as your partner, you'd get almost nowhere in this kind of a venture. My idea was to go to a guy by the name of Anatoly Chubais. Chubais was the Russian who was privatizing the country. I mean, he did that all over. He was reviled, he was loved. I know we invited him to a luncheon at the Bank of America Club in San Francisco one day to celebrate all he'd been through. And he introduced himself to the people that were there, and he said, "Hello, my name is Anatoly Chubais. I'm the second most hated man in Russia." And what he didn't say, but everybody in the room knew, was that the number one most hated man in Russia was Gorbachev, because by that time, the country's economy had gone downhill. So I knew we had to write a letter to Chubais and get him to intervene. I found myself at the consulate in San Francisco, which was then the Soviet consulate, and I met one of the visa officers, Sasha, and I said, "Sasha, would you help me write a letter?" And I explained why, and he said yes. And so we wrote a 4-page single-spaced letter to Chubais in Moscow, explaining to him why he had to intervene and keep the mayor of Moscow from privatizing the shares that belonged to the Ministry of Railways. And it worked. Chubais did, in fact, intervene, and it made all the difference in the world.